Hello and welcome to the Events Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Taylor, and each week I talk with event professionals about how they plan, promote, and run their events. We help you build your events business by growing your business around live events. Whether you're running small meetups or conferences, trade shows, and concerts, we focus on finding actionable tips that you can use immediately. In terms of what I've been up to, I'm just back from San Francisco. I recorded the last episode from there. I was across for the Google Next conference, which is a huge 40,000 person event. Good experience, but kind of, San Francisco is a long way to go from Prague for 4 days, so it was a bit tiring, but it was a great experience. Now I'm back in Prague only for 4 days. We're heading to the mountains to get maybe a little bit of snow. There's the place we stay in Raris, the ski resort is closed now, but there's Kitzsteinhorn close by, which has a glacier, so there's pretty much year-round skiing and snowboarding. So a little bit of skiing, a little bit of mountaineering, playing with the baby. So really looking forward to the Easter weekend down in Austria. In terms of what I've been up to with Events Frame, we've been interviewing for a sales and marketing co-founder. So we've been hiring someone to come onto our team to really help us push the sales and marketing. And we're just in the middle of that process now. I've actually, before I recorded this, I interviewed a bunch of people and I'm talking to some more tomorrow. So spoken to some really cool people and hopefully been making a decision soon on that. Just as a reminder, Events Frame is a software system I'm CEO of and a co-developer. It's a ticketing system if you run any kind of events, whether it's meetups, conferences. It's super cheap pricing. It's got integration with your PayPal or your Stripe or your Braintree. It integrates with any email marketing system you could use, whether it's MailChimp, Aweber, Infusionsoft, everything. Really good integrations and just a really simple way to sell tickets. We've got a website builder. So very much like Eventbrite, but with much better pricing and a much better user experience. So check it out. Please send me an email with the subject. Send me an email to dan@eventsframe.com, dan@eventsframe.com with the subject line podcast, and I'll give you a special discount code. So on to this week's interview. This is actually a repost. I was a guest on a podcast by somebody called Jen Miller, and she has a podcast called More Travel in Life, and really interesting podcast. I highly recommend everyone to check it out, all about travel and business. And, I get asked all the time, how do I run over 300 events a year at Apps Events? And the reason is because I've got a great team, and that team is remote. It's based around the world. Like we've got team members in the UK, in Czech Republic, in the US, in Peru, Thailand, in Philippines. So we've got people all over, and we run that remotely. So, obviously when you run an event, at the time you run the event, you physically got to be in a certain place. But in between, you can plan, promote, run, do a lot of stuff from anywhere, and our team collaborates around the world. So we get into how I did that, and we just talk about travel generally, I know a lot of people in the digital nomad community who run pretty big businesses, just staying from Airbnbs around the world. And I was a little bit like that for a while. I was a consultant who traveled, and then I was a freelancer. So I've always traveled, and it's a really interesting topic for me. I love to talk about it. So I think you'll enjoy this interview. Jen's a great interviewer, and she gets into a lot about my backstory and about how I started running Apps Events and Events Frame. So thanks everyone for listening. I really, really appreciate it. If I could just ask one thing, if you enjoy this podcast, please just send a link to one person. It's great just to slowly grow the listenership. And if you know anyone who could be interested in helping run events to grow their business and just general entrepreneurial topics, as you know, we get into a lot of things outside of just running events. Please send them a link to the podcast. I'd love for them to check it out. And that's it, really. On to the interview with Jen.
Welcome to episode 39, and welcome to the More Travel in Life podcast. I'm your host, Jen Miller. In every episode, I connect with an amazing person, just like you, who has a mortgage, kids, job, and we talk and learn about how they've incorporated more travel into their life. Their stories, approaches, and insights give us inspiration to create our own unique blend of life with more travel. Before we get to today's guest, there's some exciting news. Y'all, I get to give out some major shout outs and read four new amazing reviews to you today. Yep, you post them, I read them because I am so grateful and they are awesome. subscribe, share, and pop over to iTunes to give the podcast a 5-star review. It really encourages others to check out the episodes and to listen to them, and I really appreciate it. Okay, here we go. This is from Shawtime807. I love this one. I would give this podcast 1,000,000 stars if I could, but I guess 5 will do for now. I can't even begin to describe how cool this is. I love to travel, but more importantly, I love to hear people's views on traveling. Traveling expands your horizon so much. With this podcast, you don't have to travel. You can learn from people that have traveled. Thank you, Shawtime. Second one is great podcast with amazing insights. I loved the most recent episode. This is from Emerald Sinclair. Thank you. I love Jen's questions into the real person behind the travel and have learned so much. This next one is from Snackob, maybe Jake. Amazing host and material, 5 stars. Jen does an amazing job of running the podcast and interview, as well as finding pertinent and relatable material. Travel is one of the most important things in our lives, and therefore it's just amazing that she's been able to track down so many different types of travelers to show the listeners that there isn't one particular way to do it. Amen. Additionally, a great interviewer voice is critical to a great podcast, and she has it. Great job. Well, thank you. I don't hear what you guys hear, but I've heard that, so I'll take it. Thank you. And then the last one is from Chels823. Jen is a great host who really digs deep to get to valuable insight that informs passionate and unique travelers. Great show. Can't wait for more. Thank you so much. And thank you guys. Those were awesome. If you guys keep writing those, I will keep smiling. All right, guys, let's get on with today's show. My guest today has focused on finding flexible employment. It's been a priority for him, and he's gotten lucky with travel as a result. He was born and raised in the UK. You'll love his accent. But he didn't catch the travel bug until he was 18. He became an entrepreneur after consulting and traveling the globe with Deloitte. He's worked without a home office and often traveled for 6 months out of the year before making Prague his home base. Now he's the CEO and founder of 2 companies, Apps Events and Events Frame, all about events. He has teams on almost every continent, and so he has great insights on managing remote teams and outsourcing. So we talk about that. And also, since his business has allowed him to travel for 12 plus years, we talked a lot about transitions and maintaining that balance as an entrepreneur, and also as a new father. He's entering that exciting new chapter of travel with his wife and 9-month-old kid. So help me welcome Dan Taylor. Dan, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to talk to you. You know Chris Reynolds.
Yeah, that's right. Chris Reynolds and me are both, I mentioned before, in a group called the Dynamite Circle. It's like it is a location-independent entrepreneur group. And we've met a few times, and I've been on his podcast, and I know he was on your podcast, and he's a really great guy.
Yeah, really enjoyed talking with him. And it's funny, circles and introductions, and I love that. So you have traveled all your life.
A lot, yeah, definitely. I am.
Just like me, yeah.
Yeah, growing up, not so much. I think maybe that's why I was so into it. Like, when I was young, we didn't really go on foreign holidays, and I didn't even go out of the UK till I was 14, probably. And then, when I went to university, I just started. I went abroad every chance I could. I worked abroad every summer. And then I took off for a year traveling straight after university. And ever since then, I've been traveling a lot.
So that taste of freedom gave you the bug to travel. And what is it about it that you love?
I think that like a lot of British, it's not so common in America, but like in the UK, loads of British people take a year out after university and just go around the world. It's like you buy a round the world ticket, and it's kind of a well-trodden path, a well-trodden path. You go to Asia for 3 to 4 months typically. You save enough money for Asia. Then you go to Australia, and if you're British, you get a 1-year working visa in Australia. So you go to Australia, make some money, and then you come back the other way. You go to New Zealand, South Pacific, usually US, Canada, maybe Latin America, and come back. So that trip, which is it's nothing exceptional. I mean, probably half my friends did something similar, but that just got me into it. I saw the world and thought I'd love to do this. But back then, this was pre-digital nomad times. There was no way to really work. Well, there wasn't really internet. There was, but it was internet, but it was kind of basic internet cafe. So it wasn't really any way to see a business I could do that. And that all came later, when I realized I could run a business that was global.
But I think the thing that's fascinating about, what you share about gap year or anything, I think it's so important for education. Like it's the world's education. It's a global tour of having you, understand the world versus just books, right?
Definitely. I mean, it used to be, I guess it came, the aristocracy in England used to have like, they'd go on a kind of grand European tour, even as far as the Middle East or Asia sometimes, and they'd travel around, and it was kind of a thing that a certain small group of society would do. Right. And then, at a certain point with these cheap round the world airline tickets, it became something that everyone started doing.
Yeah, and I think we are starting to get more influenced by, all of you and do the gap year. I never got to do that and went out right after school, but I traveled a lot as a kid. But I think it can be so helpful to anyone to do any kind of sabbatical gap year. So that's amazing.
Well, why do you think Americans don't do it so much? Do you think it's because of the student debt, or people are a bit more insular in terms of thinking?
Well, I think, when you're in the UK, you just have access, within an hour or two to be in another country and to explore different cultures because, back then we're all a little, connected more now these days, obviously. But back then it was like you go to Germany, that was a completely different experience than going to Portugal, right? So I think it's just geographically. Did you design your life for travel and then build these businesses, or did you realize that these businesses helped you travel and it almost led to that?
I basically started off working as a management consultant with Deloitte, and so I never really had any stability. Like when you're a management consultant, you're working on a project, you're at a client site for maybe 6 months or 3 months or longer even. That's kind of how I started. So I was always out traveling. And, and if you work for Deloitte in the US, you'd be working interstate, and I was working intercountry. So I kind of like, I'd already done my year out traveling after university, and then with the Deloitte thing, I was traveling, and that just, that just got me into it completely. I was like a gypsy, I was always traveling, and I just kind of, I guess it just stayed with me, that was the way my work was.
Yeah, you kind of learned that lifestyle, and you're like, all right, I like it.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah,
nice.
And it's, and I got sick of it, after 8 years or so, I just having no fixed base, it got a lot, but 8 years is a long time. I did it for a long time.
Yeah, that is a long time. Yeah, and like I said, I think I reacted to just traveling every 2 years as a kid, and now I've been in Atlanta for almost 20 years because I think subconsciously you almost react to whatever phase that you're in. It goes both ways, right? If you've been traveling a lot and having no home base like you kind of want to settle down or change the scenery, then if you've been just kind of staying in one place and never going anywhere, you're like, I need to get out of here. So you just, you want to go on that sabbatical. So I think it just goes both ways. But that's really interesting that Deloitte and that kind of gypsy mindset, because you're right, like you go wherever the client is, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then when I went freelance, it was more of the same. I was working for myself, but still just taking contracts everywhere. And I worked in some cool places. I was in the Caribbean, in Jamaica and Grand Cayman. I was in Asia. I was in Silicon Valley. I was everywhere in Europe, pretty much. So it was, it was working all over the place.
That's amazing. Yeah. And some of those big companies, they really do help you kind of see the world.
Yeah, I mean, I've only got good things to say about Deloitte. I'm not a corporate guy. I didn't like working for a big company, but they were a good company. They treated me really well. I got to go to some cool places, But I worked hard for that. I made them a lot more money than they paid me, So it was a trade-off, Like if you work for Deloitte in Europe, like I did, I'd be working Monday to Thursday in a different country, flying back on Friday. And so I would like from day one, pretty much my career, after a brief stint at the bank, I was just traveling, And so I never had the stability that most people had. I never had the office and the standard desk and my desktop computer. I didn't even have Deloitte. You just got a laptop and you're out at the client. Maybe you come in the office.
And you go wherever they are, yeah.
Wherever they want. You don't have much choice. It's like there's a project starting in Germany. You're flying to Germany 4 or 5 days a week. The next project's in Denmark. I was based out of Prague, which is why I came here. But I was just traveling, And then basically I figured out my kind of transition to be an entrepreneur was like I was an employee for Deloitte. But then I looked at all these guys going contracting, so going freelance. So I had a set of skills in SAP, and Deloitte were paying me X, but I could charge myself out at a daily rate and make more, quite a bit more. Obviously with a much higher risk because I'm taking 3-month contracts. I might be waiting around, but I didn't care. I was just like, I was single at the time, and I was like, look, I'll take a 3-month contract, And then I just go and hang out in Asia and wait for the next contract. I just like, I didn't have a permanent address. I didn't have a permanent house. I was just on the road, like.
And this was still with Deloitte?
No, yeah, this was freelance. So I basically
got
left
it.
Deloitte and went and like, I'm just going to go freelance. Take the contract, like take a 3-month contract and hang out for the next one. And then that's what I did that for 8 years.
And you liked it?
I liked it in the beginning, but I got really sick of it. I got really sick of like just being on the road all the time, like I still love travel now, but I like to have a base. I like to have like a house where all my stuff is. Even forget the fact that, I'm married now in a serious relationship. Even just, I love the travel, and I did it. 8 years is a long time, but it was too much. In the end, I just had enough. And I often wonder about all these digital nomads, if they're all going to just get sick of it after a while. It's kind of a new thing, and I'm curious how it's all going to pan out long term. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have interviewed a lot of folks and families that, they take a sabbatical, they take some travel, and then they realize it's time to change the scenery. Just like how when you were in a job, then you want to change the scenery to travel, the scenery needs to change again. And so I think we're all needing that fresh perspective, no matter which way it goes.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, to answer your question, I moved around every 2 years for, basically.
Like slow travel.
Yeah. I mean, but this was when I was a kid. I had no choice. So I would hop school systems because my dad would just be assigned to different places. And so we would move every 2 years. And I remember being kind of traumatized about, being plucked out of schools and having to make new friends. But then I think I've stayed here in Atlanta for, the folks listening to travel would be like, what? For 20 years, I've been in Atlanta, but I always get that dose of travel. So I feel like it gives me that, like you said, that home base. But I think it's honestly a reaction to traveling so much when I was younger. It's like subconscious to like lay down some roots. And then, now I'm starting to get a little itchy about, traveling and heading somewhere else. So.
Yeah, it's always the case, if you have too long not traveling, you miss it.
Yes.
Because when I finished contracting, the next stage was I started a consulting and recruitment company based around the skills I had in SAP with a friend of mine here in Prague. And that was really like a regular business. We had an office, our business was local. And I didn't really travel for 6 years, and I hated it. I really hated it. I was looking for a way to get out of that business. I managed to sell my share, still remain really good friends with my friend and co-founder. But I just realized it wasn't for me, turning up to an office every day. Great. Some people just can't live without it. I couldn't do it. I found it really hard.
And then, so you were based in Prague, and how did your new businesses come about?
So, like I said, I was in this, I started this business doing mostly recruitment for IT kind of people that were in the area I was in. And I managed to sell my share in that. And I was looking for something to do. I wanted to do, two things. I wanted to do something technical again, because that was my background as an IT guy. And secondly, I didn't want to have an office. I wanted to be traveling and be on the road, at least have the option, at least, like having a location independent business I could run from anywhere. I didn't want to have employees. So I started, I had a friend who'd gone to work for Google, a really good friend. And he was like, look, Dan, take a look at Google. It's free for schools, Google for education, Google Apps, all these tools are free. There's loads of opportunities. And so I just started looking into it. And I just set up a business helping schools move to Google, like if they wanted to set up Google Apps in their school or university, I'd set it up. I'd support them remotely. I'd do their training. I'd integrate it with other systems, and I just did everything, like whatever people wanted, I did. Sometimes for almost no money. Yeah,
and tell me, Dan. So like you're coming from SAP, Deloitte Consulting. I mean, those are big bucks, and then now you're helping schools. How did that transition happen? That you were like, okay, I'm going to do that. Was it just opportunity? Was it something that you wanted to do? Because I would assume that there's not as much money. But what did you see as potential?
Well, you're exactly right. But I kind of had the in-between stage after Deloitte, and where I started this recruitment agency.
Yes.
And now, that we made really good money until 2008 when the financial crisis hit, and then it just dropped off a cliff, Yeah. So from then, it was just playing. We didn't pay ourselves for 2 years. We were just running to get the business back. And when I got a chance to sell it, I was glad to be out. So I was kind of starting from kind of a low end, And I could have gone back to SAP consulting, but I'd done that,
Yeah.
And I kind of had a bit of a confidence I could make something else work. So you're right, it wasn't big bucks in the beginning, but there is a lot of money in education. People make that mistake, You can make a lot of money with schools,
especially administrative stuff, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially if you're dealing with private schools, international
exactly.
schools, or even in the US, like school districts and stuff, you know? So yeah, you're right. It wasn't a lot of money in the beginning, but I could see it could be a big business. I mean, and you know, now we've got that business employs 12 people, and we run events, you know, all across the world for schools.
And educate some of the rest of us in terms of what is the Google for Schools, and what is actually that platform that you're facilitating.
So the thing is, I guess you know G Suite, which used to be Google Apps, which you probably use it yourself, which is Gmail, Google Drive, all these suite of applications. So if you're obviously you can have a free Gmail account, but if you're a business, you get a G Suite for Business account, which means you pay $50 per year per person, you know, to have that account. So you have it on your own domain, you know, at dantaylor.com. So that's G Suite. That's the core offering. And Google offered this for free to schools. It's completely free. So there's a huge sort of market in terms of schools need help setting Google up, you know, setting up all the Google tools, G Suite. They need help supporting it. They need help with training the staff. And that's kind of what I was doing, you know, helping schools set it up. But Google has all this other connected stuff for schools. Like, I don't know if you know about Chromebooks, which are, you know, laptops running Google's operating system, which are huge in schools. I mean, 80% of US schools use them. You know, they buy millions a year. So, you know, helping with Chromebook implementations with school. But then Google has all this other stuff. They've got a tool called Google Classroom, which is a classroom management tool they give for free to schools. You've got like using YouTube, you know, YouTube in education. You've got using Google Maps and Earth to teach geography and economics and different topics. So like there's tons and tons of stuff Google have for schools, and it's all free. You know, it's like, it amazes me still that not every school in the world aren't using these tools because they're so good
and
Dan,
they're free. Can homeschoolers use this, or do you have to be a school system?
You have to be a school.
Okay.
You have to be a not-for-profit school. You wouldn't get access to it. But as a homeschool, you could just use a free Gmail account and get most of the stuff. You know, maybe if you were a part of, like, I know some homeschoolers, they're part of a virtual school district. And I know about some of these virtual school districts. A friend of mine works for one in New Hampshire. And if you're connected to that, then that virtual school district could get access to G Suite for Education. Okay. So you could do it that way.
Excellent. And tell me about the events piece of it, or I guess so it's implementing the Google, you know, suite or network for schools. And then
in the beginning, and then the events, exactly. Like, so now we don't do that. Now we just do training, and the events, you know, we run three kinds of events, but the biggest kind is we run what are called Google for Education summits. So they're basically like a 2-day conference, just like a conference you'd attend yourself about a topic you're interested in. But, you know, they have like 100 to 200 people, bunch of breakout sessions, keynote, networking party. You know, it's a proper conference where teachers and people that work for schools learn about Google, you know.
Okay.
And we run these literally all over the world. I mean, just for example, in the last month, we've just run one in Mongolia, just ran one in London, we ran one in Arkansas, we ran one in Peru. So like literally we're running these things all over the world, you know. So that's the main thing. I don't know if you want to know any more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question that I would have is, did you know that would facilitate travel all over the world, and then your team goes and helps to do that, and that was your way to experience the world and even more of the world? Or did that just kind of be a lovely accident?
Yeah, you know, like maybe subconsciously, I didn't really think of it like that, but yeah, I guess subconsciously I probably did. So how it came about, I mean, I ran one event in Prague, which was where I lived, and I had a good contact with the International School of Prague, a friend of mine, John Micton. No one had run a Google for Education event in Europe, so I just ran one. I didn't really have permission from Google. I just went ahead and did it, you know. I mean, I had kind of like half permission. No one objected to me doing it, you know. So I'm like, Google for Education Summit, and I just ran it. And I, you know, almost by accident, I mean, I made quite a lot of money out of it, you know, like compared to what I had, which was very little, you know. I mean, I made it enough to keep me going for another 6 months. So it was really good. So, and then what happened was at that event, because it was kind of new, people came from all over the world. I had a lot of people from the US, from Asia, and a guy came from Bangkok, from the American School of Bangkok, and he was like, look, let's run this in my school. And I was like, cool. So literally, like 2 months later, I'm on a plane to Bangkok, and I met him, and then two months after that, we ran an event in Bangkok. So nice. And then there was a second guy who was from Arkansas, actually a Californian guy who works a lot in Arkansas, and he was like, let's run this in Conway, which is just near Little Rock. So literally from that first event, I had a bunch of people, one from Thailand, one from America, and then I ran those. And so it just became a global business without ever planning it.
That's amazing. And how many locations and trips have you made, you said?
Millions. I mean, we ran, I mean, like we're recording this in April 2019. In 2018, we ran over 300 events. Not all like this. So the other events I didn't get onto, we run a lot of smaller training events, 1 or 2 day boot camps to get people certified in Google tools. And we also run events for Google, but now, I mean, how we structure the business now, there's a guy based in Thailand, an English guy who runs all of Asia and the Middle East. Okay. And then a guy in the UK, 2 guys in the UK actually who run the UK, a girl in Czech Republic who runs Europe, mainland Europe, somebody in Peru who runs Latin America, and a lady in New Hampshire who runs the US and Canada. So we've got it regional now. We've got a person in every region. They run it. I don't go to most events. I mean, it's not physically possible, but they run most of their own events. We organize it centrally, and we get the speakers and stuff.
That's amazing. So you have a remote team.
Yeah.
Talk to us about how you started to set that up. Maybe some listeners either want to set up remote teams, they want to grow their businesses, but you went from one-man band to having this amazing global remote team. What did that evolution look like?
I can tell you exactly. So, funny enough, I've got a podcast, the Events Podcast, and I just interviewed a guy last week called Chris Ducker. Have you heard of Chris Ducker? He's got a book called Rise of the Youpreneur. Really, really interesting book. Yeah. You should check him out. You should get him on your podcast. He's a great guy. But he's an expert in outsourcing. So he was also a member of the Dynamite Circle where I met Chris Reynolds. And he's got loads of businesses. He's a multi-talented guy, but he had a business called Virtual Staff Finder. So he was based in the Philippines, and he had a business helping you find staff in the Philippines. So I hired my first person in Cebu, Philippines, where he was based. I went across and met them, and I hired a person to start doing all the back-end administration. And then that worked. I hired actually the first one didn't work out. The first lady didn't work out. I hired a second and a third. And now I've got a team in Cebu in the Philippines. So we've got a core team of 3 and then a few contractors as well. So basically what I did was I just hired from the Philippines. I tried to make everything like a process. So for example, if I run a podcast, I just record the audio, and then the team in the Philippines, they create the cover art, they upload the podcast, they edit it, But all the events, they would do anytime there's an inquiry from an attendee, they would answer the inquiry. They'd help create all the websites for the events. They'd help promote it. They'd do the social media. So at the beginning, really, I just focused in on, I learned a lot about running a remote team, but I decided to keep everyone in the same place. So I only hired people in this town called Cebu, which is the second biggest city in the Philippines. I went out there once a year, to work with the guys. And I've been doing that since I hired the first person in 2013. So, 6 years now, and I can talk till the cows come home about running a team in the Philippines and the challenges, but that's kind of the core. That's how I got started. To answer your question, I got someone in the Philippines. I hired more and more, and I built up a team to run all the back end process of the business. Yeah, that makes
sense. So that you could focus on the networking and the events and setting up more business, and then they could
the
help
sales
support
basically.
You. Right?
That it's really hard to outsource sales. I discovered that pretty early on. You've got to go out and get do that yourself in the beginning, and you can outsource it, but it's hard.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And then from there, you just continued to gain that confidence that you could rely on remote teams, and then that grew and grew and grew.
Yeah, well, so the team in the Philippines was the one thing, and that's still there, and that's that'll always be part. Like I say to people, like if I stop this business now, I'd still keep the Philippines team as long as I could afford it, and I'd put them onto my next business because they're such cool people. They're friends now, and I like working with them, and it's an easy way to do it. But in addition, so the other guys I mentioned, we've got regional managers in 5 different places. These guys were all just people who were speaking at my event. So when we run an event, we get a lot of free speakers who we don't pay, but then if we get someone who's really good and comes back, we start paying them. And these were guys who I just paid and to speak, and they did a really good job, and they were they helped out, and then we worked more and more, and it was kind of a transition. In the beginning, we paid them to speak, and then it was like, hang on a minute, why don't I pay you for work 2 days a month, and you can do some organization, and then it becomes 2 days a week, and then it's like, okay, let's just give it full time plus profit share,
Yeah, because obviously they get connected into the organization, and you get excited and passionate about what you're doing. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly right.
Awesome. And so has that transitioned into the software piece that you mentioned, the software business?
Yeah, the software business at EventSpray.
You got a lot going on.
Yeah, I've got a lot going on. But it's good, I think I need it. I need to I need it. I need that, I think. But that's it's called Events Frame. It's a ticketing system. So anyone listening who runs any kind of event, if it's a meetup, if it's a conference, you can use it. We have a flat low fee from $20 a month. It's so we built that for ourselves in the beginning. So which is a good way to start a software business. We used it. You probably heard of Eventbrite. That's kind of the biggest. They charge almost 4% of the ticket price for every sale. So when you're running the volume of events we're paying thousands of dollars to Eventbrite every year, and we couldn't find a cheap solution. So that's why we ended up building our own system. And from day one, I had an eye on, look, this is going to be a separate business. We want to sell it to customers, but you know what? We built it to scratch our own itch. That was how it started.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
But separate company, I've got two separate partners in that. One is a developer, and the other one is actually a guy who works for me at Apps Events. He's also a partner in this business. So I try to keep the two separate. Kind of hard to juggle my time sometimes. They're connected, but they're separate businesses, and I don't want everybody in Apps Events to worry about Events Frame.
Right. No, that makes sense. They're two initiatives. Yeah. And then you have your own podcast, and that's really cool. We'll talk shop soon.
Yeah, let's talk about podcasting. I love podcast. I'm a podcast junkie. All I do is listen to podcasts.
You do? It's funny because I don't listen to as many, but I do have some favorites. And so that's fascinating too, that your podcast is so niched. But it's about, hosting events, right? And people doing events. And
exactly right. Yeah, it's called the Events Podcast, and it's all focused on running events, and we talked about it earlier. It is a sales funnel, I mean, that was kind of how I justified it to myself, is because it helps get customers for Events Frame for our software. The best thing, I don't know if you found this with podcasting, but the thing I've found, which I didn't think about, is it's an amazing way to meet people. Once your podcast is established, and because in the beginning it's hard, but once people see it's been done for months, they see you've got some solid guests on it. They see you've got comments and things. Like, I'm getting to speak to some pretty high-end people that I probably wouldn't get access to. But because they want to be on the podcast, you do. And so I'm building some great connections because of that.
And how long have you been doing it?
I'm doing it for like 4 months, 5 months, I think. Okay. No, more. A minute. I lose track. No, 7 months. Jeez. I can't even know. 7 months.
Yeah, it goes by fast. By fast. Awesome. So your life has transitioned a bit. You're married and you have a little baby, 9 months old?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, 9.5, yeah.
Yeah. So how has your life changed? You said you traveled a ton, and then now you've transitioned and now like to have a home base. Is that in Prague?
Yeah, we kind of lucky. We've sort of got two home bases. We got Prague, obviously, which is where we live, and we got a house here. But we also have an apartment in Austria, in the Alps, which we share with a friend. So and we rent it out in between. So I'm really into skiing and snowboarding. So we spend quite a bit of time down there in the winter. But it's a 5-hour drive from here, so it's pretty close. But yeah, basically we're based in Prague, but we've traveled in between.
Amazing. And do you still get to travel, and are you planning anything in the future?
Yeah, well, so I went through a phase of traveling until I met my wife, which is kind of 3 years ago, I guess. I just traveled like half of the year, sometimes more, I didn't really have, I was based in Prague, but I'd probably be here half the time. Then with her, it just changed because she's got a regular job, so that meant she had, in Europe, it's much better than US, but if you've got a job in Europe, you have 5 weeks holiday a year. So we'd have 5 weeks away together, and then I'd still do a bunch of trips, but I'd try to keep it to 3, 4, 5 days, maybe a week if I was going to Asia or the US or something,
And Dan, how was that transition? I mean, was it like, obviously you're in love and with someone, so it's obviously nice, but how did you feel about the travel in that transition? We've talked a lot about transitions on the show here.
I didn't notice it. Maybe because I was in love. But it actually helped my business. I started. It's hard to work on the road. I know you'll see a million videos of YouTube of guys in Chiang Mai on their laptop saying how productive they are and how many making it. But it is hard,
Yeah.
And actually, it forced me to spend more time here, and I definitely helped my business a lot. It didn't bother me. I just get focused on different things. Like, I realized I was going to spend a lot of time in Prague, so I got really addicted to squash because I'm like, squash is a game I can play all the time in the city. So I just started doing that all the time. I need something to focus on, But then the new phase since having the baby, it's got better because my wife's on maternity leave now. She's hopefully not going to go back to work. We're going to work out something she can do online. So now we're planning to do longer travel. And we've already went out to Taiwan with the baby, and we're going to go to Asia for 3 months in the fall. So now I'm planning just longer trips. We're going to take the three of us. We'll rent an Airbnb in wherever. Let's say might go to the US for the summer. We might go to Asia. And this is my plan now: is we're going to travel, but longer trips. It's really hard to travel with a young baby just for a few days. I've done some short trips in Europe, and it's just it's just a hassle, So I think if we do longer trips, we'll get into the life of a place and chill a bit more.
Kind of live like a local for a bit.
Yes, exactly right.
So for a few weeks at a time?
Yeah, well, like I said, Asia, so we're going for definitely 2 months.
Okay.
And the first month is going to be in Bangkok because I'm working with James, the guy who works with me. He's based out of Bangkok. So we're going to get a condo. I already know the area, which is cool. Cool. There's some amazing places to stay there with great pool complexes and stuff. And
nice.
Yeah, a month in Thailand. And then we've got a few things to do. We're going to go to the Philippines, to Cebu, to work with a team. And then try to find somewhere on the beach where I can work from the beach and do a bit of surfing or something.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard the Philippines are just beautiful, beautiful.
Philippines is amazing. But it's also, you can't idle. You got to be ready for the reality. I mean, the cities are grimy, crowded. It's a third world country,
Yeah.
There's a lot of social problems that people have to put up with there. It's hard to be a Filipino when I think what my team go through in terms of just the bureaucracy and the hassle. And then the typhoons, your whole town gets destroyed by a typhoon pretty regularly, and all that kind of stuff. It's a tough place to live, but it's amazing. Like the beaches are amazing. Yeah. The people are amazing. People, when you get to know them, are super friendly.
Yeah, you've obviously shown that they are the loyal, and you're loyal to them.
Yeah, but there's a big but. A lot of people have problems with Filipino staff, disappearing, not being reliable. Usually, it's the problem of the hirer, like the problem of the person like me, because they think it's easy to run a remote team, and they can just have But often these managers are young, they're inexperienced, and it takes time. You've got to really give They're no different from somebody in the US or England. They want a job that's interesting. They want to make good money so they can buy a house and start a family. They got the same hopes and dreams that any of us have.
Sure.
So if you think of them just like as some kind of outsourced person in a different country and expect them to do everything, it's never going to work long term, And it's hard. So I think I was a terrible manager in the beginning. I wasn't very sensitive to all these things, but I kind of learnt it, and so if you're prepared to put the time in, you can build an amazing remote team there that'll really help you grow your business. But you can't expect it's just a case of you ship a load of work and they do it, because it's not easy like that.
Yeah, like any team, they need direction, they need training, they need feedback to get better and better.
Exactly right.
And Dan, do you have the usual tools to collaborate with them? How did you find that working with a remote team? Do you use the usual Slack, or are there special tools that they like to use?
We're a Google shop, so we do almost everything.
Oh, got it. Right,
Google.
Right.
So we use Google Hangouts all day to chat. Google Hangouts, obviously Gmail. We use Google Drive. All our documents are in Drive. So that's pretty much all we use. We use Trello for our projects. Trello system for project management. We don't use Slack. I mean, I use Slack for some other things. I just find it annoying. I know everyone loves it, and I know I'm the only person in the world, but I'm just like, I don't need another communication channel. I just don't
it's
like.
Hard to have that always open. It's a different mentality.
Yeah, it is. So we just use Google Tools. We use Trello.
Yeah. No, I think that would cover it, right? Yeah, exactly.
We're just in G Suite all day long.
You mentioned, Google, and I was like, oh yeah, they have every tool in the toolbox. But I just realized when you said it, I'm like, yeah, when are they getting kind of like a Kanban kind of type of tool like Trello? They don't have that.
Yeah.
That's right. One thing that's missing.
They should do. But by the way, the new Google Chat is getting much more like Slack. They're definitely going after the Slack market.
Okay.
So check out the new Google Chat, but because it's integrated with.
And remind me, so what is exactly the relationship with Google? So you're a Google preferred partner?
Yeah, we're Google for Education partner basically, and it's just changed when it's now Google Cloud. It changes. I'm flying out to San Francisco on Saturday for the big annual Google Partner Summit, which will be cool in the Moscone Center. Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, I'm only really there for 3 days, so it's, family stuff, but it's cool. We have a lot of small get-togethers, but this is the one big annual partner event. It was New York last year. It's in San Francisco this year.
Nice. Yeah, Moscone, like that. Anything Google is big. They do it.
Yeah. I've never been to Moscone Center. Have you been there?
I haven't been to the actual center. It's really pretty, and just being around that area is really nice. But I have actually been to the Google campus, and that is amazing.
It's true. Yeah, I've been there a ton of times.
Yeah.
So that was like the first time I went there, I'm like, oh, that was the first time I thought like, oh, this is really cool that I've got that business. I'm in the Google campus.
This is legit. Yeah.
Like Instagramming like crazy.
Yeah. So let's go back to like the fun little trip that you're doing. So Bangkok, Cebu, and then just the beach. And then you'll be working during that time, obviously, and running your businesses.
Yeah, exactly, which is a challenge. So Bangkok will be easy, like I already know where we're going to be working. It's funny, I'm actually a member of, me and James, who I work with, members of the British Club in Bangkok, which they've got this amazing place, which is, it's actually perfect because they've got great sports facilities, lawns, they've got childcare people all day, so the wife and the baby can just hang out there, play, go by the pool, get food. But they've also got a co-working space there, so I'm just going to work there. Get my work done there. So that's kind of the month in Bangkok. It's pretty much work. We'll do stuff on the evenings and weekends. Then the rest of it, it's going to be a mixture, when I go to Philippines, we'll do some work, we'll do some holiday. And the beach, I'll try to take a couple of weeks just completely off, I don't do that enough, really. It's easy to talk about all the cool things about what I do and this kind of business, but the dark side is, it's tough to properly take time off. And sometimes you can be in a cool place, but if you're stressed about something and you're on a conference call at 2 a.m, it loses the glamour of being on a nice beach. So I'm going to try on this trip, like I've done it once or twice, just unplug two, maybe even 3 weeks and just chill.
Yeah, I think that's important. And it's really funny that you mentioned that, Dan, because Chris mentioned it the same way. He's like, I take in a lot of trips and I travel a lot, but I don't take a lot of vacation.
Well, yeah, I mean, I got plenty of friends in this kind of type of business who they don't take any day completely off. They don't even take 1 day a week off. Totally, ever, 7 days a week. And they travel and they'll take loads of half days off, but they'll still work every day.
Yeah. But I think you're right. Like, it's just so important. I know that there's now a trend of digital detox and, put the phone down. And I think that time away, sometimes you can get mini doses. How do you kind of manage that? Like being on all the time?
No, I mean, I don't know, I don't think I manage it very well is the answer. I think it's something I need to work on. I'm not someone who claims to have all the answers. I think that I noticed it when we got married 2 years ago and we went to Panama on a honeymoon and 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But I switched off completely. My wife forced me. Like I only even like checked my phone, once a day. I didn't look at email, anything. And like I realized I was probably sleeping an extra hour a day, and you realize the effect it has on your subconscious from always just checking your. I don't know about you, but I'm just like I can't stop checking my phone all the time.
And Dan, because if you have a truly global team, you're almost on in every time zone. Like there's something going on.
Although the regional people take over a lot of that. So they don't call me. No, like for example, I never get called at 5 or 6 at night ever. I never get called before 7, 8 in the morning. So it's not that bad actually. But I just realized when I unplugged for just how relaxed I was like, you don't realize that we're not designed as humans to be checking a computer screen every 10 seconds. We're just not, and all the slacks and everything in the world can't combat thousands of years of evolution. It's like we just, and the answer is I'm not sure. I need to do it more. I need to unplug more.
Well, I think we're all finding that almost as a society, and that's why I think it's a growing conversation about digital detox and unplugging. But I love this bit because I always apply it to my computer, but I guess we could apply it to us. It's like if all else fails, reboot. Right?
Yeah. Well, what do you do? I mean, do you take certain days off a week, certain weeks off a year? Like, how do you handle it?
I'm learning. I'm a new entrepreneur, but at the same time, I love the flexibility that, later today after this conversation, I have to go get my hair cut, and I'm going to go take care of some personal things like my car emissions and my driver's license and things like that. So I have that flexibility, but you have flexibility, but then there's the opposite side of structure, right? So it's productivity in that. But then the other side is, like, how do you take vacation and really unplug? I think you just have to, but I'm learning that when you do unplug, because entrepreneurs are on all the time because you're passionate about what you're doing. And so there's always some project. Like I think as entrepreneurs, we just keep adding projects to ourselves, like you and your businesses. And I'm finding the same thing. It's like, I'm just adding little projects here and there. And so you just chase them and you kind of get into this mindset. But yeah, I think so. I think you find new reasons to unplug, whether that's a cabin or a beach getaway for a week or even a weekend, or a half day even to go up to the park. You
don't have like a day a week when you like a digital detox.
I've heard of that, in terms of like 1 day is a creative day, 1 day is completely off. I don't. I mean, do you know people who do that?
Yeah, well, I know people who do. Yeah, a couple of things. I've got like one friend here in Prague, and he does 1 or 2 days a week when he has his kind of creative days. Doesn't schedule any meetings.
Yeah,
he kind of hangs out in a coffee shop.
Right.
But then I don't want to badmouth the guy because he's a cool dude. But then I look look at him and I'll meet him like a year later, and he's kind of like, he hasn't really done anything, last year. So I'm not sure if that's a great example of how to, because there's like, these things are cool, and it's cool to think about, your stress level and chilling and detoxing. But, if you're also a driven person who wants to succeed and do a lot, it's hard. You have to work hard, you know what I mean? Like, you can't, I haven't seen many people have it both ways, so I know people who do that. One guy, and actually there's a second person I know, but neither of them really are pushing themselves forward. So it's like, there's a trade-off there.
Yeah, and I think there's two schools, right? So there's the, the hustle and grind and always on and got to work.
Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah, and I think that there's a new school that, and I'm also learning about it too, about, once you know what you want, the rest can come a little easier if you have the right mindset, if you attune yourself to the opportunity when it does come, and then you hustle, but in almost letting it flow. And so I think that's an interesting, and I think lifestyle kind of plays into it, obviously, but I think it's an interesting, it's a spectrum. Let's just say it that way.
Definitely. And the only way I found to grow my business while chilling more is by hiring good people and hiring people that aren't going to bother you every 5 minutes. And, I've got team members, some weeks I never talk to them, and not doesn't always, I've got people that call me all the time, but then that's the dream situation, because then if you've got a good person working for you, they can grow the business while you sleep. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
But I think there's one more component, Dan. It's like, you have a clear vision. And I think that allows them, and that clarity allows them to do what they need to do to support the business, the vision, the goal. And I think that's where clarity is always, like, it's on my board right now. It's like clarity and purpose, so as long as the purpose is clear, I think everyone can go do their jobs.
Good point.
Yeah. And then the path is forward. So yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. And Dan, how can anyone who maybe wants to do an event or has an event get connected to what you offer? Sure.
Well, in terms of what anyone listening to this might be interested in, check out our software, EventsFrame, EventsFrame.com. EventsFrame, that's, if you run any kind of event, it's a great way to sell tickets. It connects to Stripe, to PayPal, Braintree, really good discount codes. It's cheaper than anything. So please check it out. If you drop me an email, dan@eventsframe.com, I'll give you a special discount code for if you mention you heard about me from this podcast. So yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone who wants to run events, but otherwise just get in touch. I'm open to, if you want to ask me questions, if you're running your first event and you want me to tell you some advice, drop me an email. I'll always help you.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah. And I thought, again, it was really intriguing that an events company allows you to travel so much, but it has, obviously. There are events happening around the world. I
post about this, why running live events is the perfect business for digital nomads, because people don't realize, people think it's a bricks and mortar business, but it's not. Like, if you're running an event, the only time you need to be in one place is when the event's happening, maybe a day before, 2 days before, but like, apart from that, you can run the business from anywhere. And what I love about it as well is you can plan your travel around events. Like, for example, we ran an event in Peru last year for the first time. We've now got a team member there. Like, I've never been to Peru. I always wanted to go, and this gave me a reason, and I can say to my wife, look, I need to go to Peru. I've got a summit there. She'll be like, oh, you got, I'm not making it up. I do. But you can kind of like, to a certain extent, I game where I run the events to places I want to visit.
Yeah, naturally. Yeah, and also there's just events happening all over the world, like you said. And exactly. like it's like little seeds, right? You cross-pollinate, like you mentioned in your story, of like, this guy wanted to do that, and then that guy, and so it just grows from there. The business grows.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for sharing, what you do and kind of opening our eyes to learning more about events and just that lifestyle that you get to have.
No, fine. It's been a real pleasure. I'd love to talk to you again, and I should get you on my podcast at some point.
Thank you, Dan. Great insights. Check out his podcast and his ticketing software if you're into the event space. Most entrepreneurs are. So thank you for listening today, and please remember to subscribe, share, and post that fab review over on iTunes so I can say thank you and can read your review on the podcast. I'm so grateful for all your kind words and your encouragement. I really can't wait for the next few weeks too, guys. We have some amazing guests lined up. I hope you have an awesome week. Bye for now. Talk to you soon.
Do you want to sell more tickets to your amazing events? EventsFrame event ticketing has been built to minimize the amount of time it takes to buy a ticket. Result? You sell more tickets. Check out eventsframe.com.